Hanshi Steve Kaufman here. I'd like to welcome you all to the show. Tonight we're going to discuss the Book of Water, which is a section of Musashi's Book of Five Rings. Book of Water explains and talks about the natural flow of things. Any questions you have, just type them up. I'll do my best to answer them. If you have any comments, feel free to lay them down. And hope you get something of value from me tonight. What Musashi's talking about in the Book of Water is essentially the idea that you don't have to force anything. When water rushes down a ravine and there are rocks in its path, water goes around them, over them. In certain instances, I guess it will go under them, unless, of course, the intensity of the water is so strong that it will push the rock or the boulder out of the way. In any event, the water does not necessarily consciously pick up a shovel and determine another way for it to go. Over a period of time, maybe millions of years, who knows, a river will meander, it'll do whatever it does. That's based on what it has had to encounter over the period of time. Okay, but we're not going to waste precious time talking about the natural psychology of water in a river. Okay, so what you have got to understand when you're practicing, when you're training, and everything you do, including what I'm doing now, is essentially a form of practice. Having put as many years as I have into my particular discipline, which is karate, and developed into heavy rubudo, which is my style, and it's legitimate based on all of my experience. I've also done iaido. Okay, there are some tremendous masters out there, there's no doubt, that can probably talk a little bit more about particular techniques. But the basic philosophical application of Musashi's ideas are essential to understand. Where you run into difficulty is when you try to force a certain technique to work according to what you think it should do. And this is a big, big mistake. What you're doing is you're wasting a lot of time, effort, and energy in trying to make something happen that does not need to happen. For example, when you pull your sword, you do a sayabiki, there are about 500 or 600, if you will, different ways to do that particular thing. But the entire idea behind the sayabiki is what happens from the pull to the noto when you're putting it back in. Everything in between is predicated on the pull and the manner in which you conduct yourself accordingly until the end of the sequence requires you to put the sword back in. Slashing, chopping, all kinds of things like that, screaming, jumping around, these do not give you the natural flow that you need. Essentially, the natural flow occurs when you have become comfortable with what you're doing and have decided that it is not necessary any longer for you to have to impress anyone. Okay, you got to understand something. Walking along the Tokaido Road back in the 16 or 1700s, very few, if any, I would imagine, wannabes would pull out their sword and start swinging and saber rattling. That's what that was, would be called. And the next thing you know, they're dead. Okay, because you don't go up against somebody who knows what they're doing and try to impress them with fancy footwork. Going back to the idea of a natural flow of things is also based on the manner in which you conduct yourself accordingly. If you walk tall, you maintain proper form and balance, the sword, okay, pay attention to this one, okay? The sword, having a soul and spirit of its own, will act out what it is intended for based on the idea that it is used to maintain peace or to kill. Okay? Samurai didn't go around and say, hey, I'm going to cut this guy's foot off. Ha, ha, ha. You know, they didn't do things like that. Either you took a guy out or you didn't, okay? And the reason I mentioned the idea of a sword having its own soul, for example, you have all no doubt heard the expression, the sword is the soul of the samurai. I have always maintained that's only half of the saying, half of the truth. Sword is the soul of the samurai when the samurai is the soul of the sword. Because if there's a distinction between the two, you're going to run into a problem of trying to control something that does not have to be controlled externally. Everything is controlled internally based on your attitudes, based on your mentality. If you're going to go ahead and, jump around and scream and shout and just swing the sword wildly, I'm using iaido. I'm using the sword at this particular point, okay? Iai, okay? We're going to also apply this to any of the other martial disciplines. Those are in martial disciplines, okay? That includes karate, jiu-jitsu, aikido, taekwondo, hurangdo, whatever it is you're practicing. It's a discipline. And the discipline has got to be approached on its terms in order for you to be able to recognize and realize all the aspects and functions of it. That's why, you hear these guys say, well, this 39th degree black belt has decided that he's going to recreate a punch and a kick combination. You don't recreate a punch and a kick combination. You don't create anything. That's number one. Number two, you accept it as done, and once you accept it as done, it flows from within you. Within you. Now, I'm not talking about this higher consciousness stuff where, oh wow, I'm going to meditate and become one with the universe. No. That's a whole different thing. And that takes a whole different set of meanings on, because once you understand that there is no need to connect to the universe, you're going to probably say, what do you mean there's no need to connect to the universe? Well, you don't need to, because you already are an extension of the universe. You have to accept yourself as the extension of the universe. Now, this gets into philosophical back and forth where I don't want to go. Okay, we're talking about the natural flow of things. You also notice that the natural flow of things occurs when you're in a gentle conversation. Like what I'm doing right now is I'm just letting it flow out. I'm not like, all right, so what you have to do is now make sure that you're in perfect form. It becomes very boring, becomes very dumb, and it stultifies your spirit. The spirit does not need you to tell it what to do. The spirit of the thing itself is within you, and therefore, when you're practicing with a particular form, it's the devotion you put into your practice that will permit the discipline to reveal more of it in you, through you, and as you. There are all different ideas that you can pursue relative to this. They say, well, if I'm good with the sword, am I good with... I'm going to use myself as an example here. If you're good with a sword and you're good with punches, you're good with kicks and this, that, and the other thing, are you good with playing a flute? Yes. And the reason for that is very simple, because the devotion you put into any particular discipline, will reflect back to you as you put it into another form of expression. Now, I teach a certain way, and I say to all my students, regardless of whether they're neophytes and beginners or they're like advanced and they've been in the discipline for a while. And when they come back with that question, which is, well, what makes a master? I said, well, a master is based on the idea that the person has accepted themselves as a master. And then the next question is, well, yeah, but they've only been doing this for an hour and a half, so how can they be a master? And this is a very good question, because when you approach something with the attitude of a master, the discipline itself will lead you and guide you to a level of performance and functionality that considers you to be a master of it. Notice I keep putting it all on that, not you. You are merely an instrument of expression. And your discipline is your expression. And this is how you get from point A to point A. See, going from point A to point B suggests time and distance. Time and distance are very viable. However, in the higher level of consciousness, cosmic consciousness, whatever they call it this week, there is no point B. Where I am right now is point A. When I finish here and go into the other room, for whatever reason, I'm not going from here to there. I'm taking my here and putting it here. So that way I don't have to worry about any kinds of transcendental mentality or transcendental acts that are going to empower me to ascend to a higher level of awareness. No. Zanshin, which is awareness, okay, is very important. And if you're aware of where you are here, then you will be aware of where you are there. And if this is point A, that is also point A. And the distance and time between getting from this point A to that point A becomes negligible. And so this way, when you're thinking in terms as a master and saying to yourself, well, let me think of something. Okay, I want to paint like Picasso. Never going to happen. I'll be able to paint. I may be able to imitate him, but I'll never paint as Picasso. I don't have to. Now, I don't paint, so what I gotta know about colors, I gotta know about brushes, canvases, all kinds of different medium to be able to get myself to that point that I can function intelligently. If I go at it with the, oh wow, this is going to take me 2,612 years before I even get a handle on how to hold a brush. Well, when you say that, you're absolutely right, but you're positively wrong. But if you approach it from the idea, I accept myself as a master painter. Whatever it is that I need to use, or whatever it is that uses me to ascend to that level of awareness and consciousness, is now in play in me, as me, through me. And so therefore, step by step, I become much more efficient. I become much more functional until, myself as the painter and the painter as myself are the same exact thing. There you go, with the sword is the soul of the samurai, samurai is the soul of the sword. As you are developing and you have this mentality of being a master and letting the natural flow of things take you, you stop thinking about being a master. Okay? You are the master. Now, you're the master at this level. You practice it a couple of more hours, and you're a master at the next level. And that's how it works. If you put restrictions of time and space into ascending to any level of accomplishment, it's going to take that much longer to get there. I can name any number of great minds, great geniuses. One that pops in my mind, I don't know why, it just popped. There's a Frank Lloyd Wright, the great architect. When he was asked what makes him think in the terms that he thinks in, the levels he thinks in to accomplish these great things, is because and what he says is, I am already a master of that environment. Therefore, I let the environment reveal itself to me. Okay? So this is how essentially it goes. Okay? What you also want to keep in mind is, as you are developing, I say, like certain people say you have to do 10,000 cuts a day. That's a little bit extreme, or is it? Because you don't know what the person doing 10,000 cuts a day is trying to accomplish. Can you accomplish the same thing with 100 cuts a day? It's not even a question of values because it doesn't matter. If you watch the movie, what was it, The Seven Samurai, the one by Kurosawa, when they were getting ready to defend the village, Toshiro Mifune's running around, like the clown in the group, but his heart and spirit were there. And he was talking to a couple of the other ones, and there was this one person out there in the woods that just kept practicing. And so I forget what his name was, or Musashi's character was. He turned around and said, well, why is he doing this over and over and over and over? And this leader of the group said, so he can become proficient with it. Now, if you're practicing as much as you're practicing, you're devoting yourself to your art form, as much as you're devoting yourself to your art form, you're devoted and you're becoming proficient with it. Okay, so let's open up the table for any questions, any ideas. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing this, try to do it every week if I can. Next week we're going to go back to, maybe another set of subjects, depending upon the fan mail I get. Okay, Sensei, can you answer this question? Can you help us with this idea or something like that? Hey, I don't practice your style. I practice his other style. How does Musashi's principle fit into that? Because another thing you have to understand, as far as the natural flow of things goes, what is your intent? What do you want to do? Okay, I'll be acute here a little bit. Well, you want to be fast with a sword so you can impress the ladies? Well, that's doable. You see that in all kinds of tournaments, don't you? Do you want to be proficient with the sword so you can get more control over your own desires and ambitions? You know people who do that. You have got to determine what the reason for your doing something is, not just like, well, it's cool, man. I like to work out. Yeah, well, that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. See the guys practicing kendo, they put on a bogu. I mean, I did that a couple of times. I said, well, not for me, man. Not at my tender age. No, not that I can't do it, as I prefer not to do it. I have other things to do. So just because someone tries something, keep this in mind, and gives it their all, if you will, and it doesn't work for them and they back out, you have absolutely no right to criticize that action. Because then again, the person who's not being able to follow up this particular set of drills, if you will, is a 295 bowler. Just making that up, okay, man? So anything that someone does naturally, even talking trash, you've heard a lot of these guys, and they're just very glib. It's a natural flow, but that's their way. It does not necessarily have to be your way, and if you don't agree with it, then you don't get involved with it. But don't go to, destroy another person's sense of self because of your lack of acceptance of it. One of my little apothemes, which is in my book, if you're going to play, play. Don't play, okay? If you're going to do something, do it. And if you haven't got your own, if you haven't got your own business, mind your own business, get some. And that way you don't have to be worrying about confrontation. See, this is where all of this hostility and worldwide angst emanates from. Hey, man, we want that. They want this. He's just, meanwhile, the people are laying on the floor, starving to death. It's 30 below zero, and they haven't got a roof over their heads, kind of thing. But the fat cats are running around, flashing all the bling. Okay, and then they wonder why the people are uneasy. Unless depending upon the development of the society itself, I don't want to go into that. Okay. Point is, if you are committed to what you're doing, for whatever reason, you are going to find, and I'll get very mundane with this one, okay? The rent gets paid, the bills get paid, you got a buck in your pocket, you got food to eat, and you got your health, and you got your work. What else you want? Oh, he's got like a Rolls Royce. I want a Rolls Royce. Do you need a Rolls Royce? Okay, go on. If you really want the Rolls Royce, don't covet his. Figure out a way to get your own. And the only way you're going to do that is by willing yourself to accomplish things. Not using willpower. Willpower burns you out. Willpower will burn you out. Okay? And accepting it as done and as your own. Okay, we're going about 20 minutes. I'm going to just go for another few minutes over here. I'd like to get some questions. If I don't get any questions, not an issue. I'm going to put on my glasses and read the chat thing over here. A lot of people here. Wow, a whole bunch of people. That's nice. Good, good. Well, I'm sure somebody out there, all these folks, has a question. Make me feel wanted. No, make me feel needed. Somebody ask a question, okay? If you want to get an autographed, here we go. You want to get an autographed copy of the Book of Five Rings, my version, which happens to be, we're celebrating the 25th year of its publication. Happens to be and this is proven, it can be checked, best-selling version interpretation of Musashi's Book of Five Rings in the world today. It's got about 1.6 million copies. I don't know how many languages. I'm going to check this out. Hold on a second. Hanshi, how are you? Good. All right. Challenge over video. Next is going to be the instruction. I can't wait to continue, especially since updating my resources. Well, very good. Congratulations, Mr. Santi. I wish you well. Well, no, I don't like to say wish. I trust you will do well. There's another thing. Wishing and hoping. Wishing is, when you wish, when you wish for something, and so you don't really believe you deserve it. Okay? When you hope for something, you're not entirely sure that you can get it. So I prefer to use the word trust and acceptance. Okay. As you accept things, and this has got nothing to do with the law of attraction, all these cockamamie, I'm going to, really go off on some of this stuff. Some of these new age ideas. Well, if you really want something, it'll happen. Well, that's a bunch of baloney, and I think the vast majority of you know that. Wanting it and having it are two completely different things, and I'm sure we don't have to go into that. Let's see what we got over here. Which Japanese editions of the Go Renault show did you base your translation on? All of them. And then I found, with a linguist friend of mine, what they were talking about, and the vast majority of them were giving very superficial answers based on because first of all, they don't live the life. Subsequent to my version having come out, all of a sudden everybody starts, this is the way to look at it. Okay, so now you have a lot of additions, but mine still just keeps going and going and going. Like the Ever Ready Bunny there or something like that. Yeah. How is your text definitive? My text is definitive because I relate it to specific actions, specific manners of conduct that you live by and you conduct yourself with. Okay? It's very easy to be able to talk about these parameters of wisdom. It's a completely different thing to live them. Now, at this particular point in my life, I do not fire with the speed and the strength that I used to fire with a couple of weeks ago when I had hair. However, I will tell you that my quickness is honed. And because my quickness is honed, and this is over a long period of time, my power is therefore just. So in a given situation, I can deal with any condition. Pretty much, you know, I'm not going to tell you I'm the toughest guy on the block anymore. Let's see. What else have we got here? Okay, I hope that answered your question there, Mr. O'Brien. It's now 26 minutes gone. I want to hang for the next 3.5 minutes and pick up any more questions. Incidentally, when Tuttle originally published my version of the book, they were very, very hesitant. Hey, how's this guy know what's going on? Okay? And they sent it to their editorial department in Japan, you know, the whole routine, okay? And it came back and they said, okay, and there was only one main thing that they really had an issue with. The 5th part of the Book of Five Rings is called, I call it Mu, which is no thing. And for a few hundred years, it was called Ku, nothing. And upon, you know, really focusing on this and paying attention to this, something didn't work. Something wasn't right. Something didn't feel right there. So, having been a student of, and I'm not like saying, you know, here's my credentials or any of that. Having been a student of Eastern philosophies, Zen, Taoism, all these things over a many long period of time, you know, ever since I was like a kid a couple of weeks ago. I said it's not Ku. You're talking about the void. Therefore, Ku, by its very definition of nothing, Nothing, nothing is something by definition. It's my firm belief that it is Mu, which is Nothing, no thing, because no thing cannot be defined. And if we apply that back to the Book of Water, here you go again. Well, what makes something natural? What makes something happen naturally is you getting out of your own way and letting it happen. Okay, a little more here. You mentioned that there are other translations didn't really have the depth because they don't live it. Considering that the David Gefter and the Kim Taylor editions are both produced by long-term students of Nietzsche, what is your training? And that's got nothing to do with anything, okay? That's got Nietzsche has nothing to do with this, with the basic philosophy. Okay, and I've been through this. I'm not going to get into this discussion because it goes absolutely nowhere. And generally, I understand where people start coming with that type of a question, what they're looking for, and they're looking for where do I get my credibility? Okay, well, I'm certainly not even going to discuss that. Okay, so again, 2 swords, 1 sword, 14 swords, you know, a machine gun, whatever you want. Depends on the discipline and the devotion you put into developing your art. Let me rephrase my question. Does practicing Mushin help the martial artist who practices Mushin? Okay, hold on. Wait a minute. Let me rephrase my question. Does practicing Mushin help the martial artist who practices Mushin? I think what you're trying to ask me is, does practicing the martial way actually help you develop the martial way? I mean, so yeah, I have to say yes. But Mu Shin is an empty mind, which is again, but we're going back to no thing, Mu, okay? This will empower you to see deeper into yourself and ascend to a higher level of consciousness is what it is you're doing. Well, there you go. Chris and Juan Suarez just joined. Where were you guys a half an hour ago when I started this? Okay. I'm going to try to do this every Monday night. Same reason I said I'm going to try to do it is because I do get a few other things in my life to do, you know? I know, man, you know, how come I just don't meditate 27 hours a day kind of thing? We'll get into a whole discussion of meditation and the fallacy that that is at another time. So what I would like you folks to do is buy the book. You know, that's how I make my wood, you know? And ask any questions, make any comments you want to make, okay? And feel free to disagree with me. Feel free to applaud me as well, you know. And I'm not humble because there's no need to be. And I want to thank you very much for having listened in. By the way, I will be doing Self-Realization Acceptance as a TV show on Zoom TV, where it's interactive. So people can get in back and forth. We can go back and forth with each other. Okay, man? And that's on Wednesdays at 7. But you'll see the announcement on Facebook, and we'll do it. Again, thank you all very, very much. Let's see, Scott, Scott Halls. Yeah, okay. If so, with whom, and if not, how can you talk about? Okay, we've been through this a couple 100 times, Scott. I know who you are. I know where you're coming from. Okay, hang it up. Okay. Again, thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you next time.